Welcome to another episode of Wellness Curated. This is your host, Anshu Bahanda. And as you know, my aim with this podcast is to help you lead a healthier, happier, more hopeful life by giving you tools, approaches, ideas, techniques that will help you. In this season, we're going to be talking about financial wellness. And today's episode is a very important one. It's about preparing kids for financial success. Now, teaching children about money early on is meant to be key to setting them up for financial success later in life. Understanding money and how it works can give them a head start in life. We have with us today a very special human being, Soha Gawaly. She is the founding partner and CEO of the Strategic Investment Group, and she's one of the highest ranking women in hedge funds. Soha is also passionate about educating underprivileged girls and helping them achieve their full potential in life. Welcome to the chat, Soha, and thank you for making the time to be here with us today.
Thank you so much for this lovely introduction. I hope I won't disappoint. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about this subject.
So, Soha, let's jump into questions. So, a lot of studies highlight that it's very crucial to give children financial literacy at a young age. So, what do you think are the key financial skills and concepts that children should acquire to set them up for success later on in life?
In my opinion, everything you give a child depends on the stage of life the child is at. And I'm speaking from not my own experience as a financial professional, but I'm speaking from my own experience as a mother who has a daughter who I've addressed this subject with throughout the different stages of her childhood. So I do believe financial literacy is really important. I think it's more important for this generation because from a very young age, children are bombarded with things that are commercial and have to do with money. With the rise of the interaction of children with social media very early on in life, like TikTok and Instagram, which are effectively currently, they might have been social media platforms a couple of years ago. Right now, they're actually like consumer marketing platforms for people to buy things and acquire things. And children are starting to be on these things from 5 years of age, 6 years of age, 7 years of age. And they're starting to think, due to peer pressure and this highly automated environment with being online all the time, they're starting to think that everything is within their reach or they should have everything. And I think the starting point should be to teach children what's the difference between what you actually need and what you actually want. And I think if you distinguish that from the very beginning, you begin step by step deciphering for them financial language, financial independence, financial tools. And I think as early as about 4 or 5 years of age is when you should really start exposing children to this. I would have said a couple of years ago, I would have said the first time I talked to my daughter about money was when she was about 7, 8 years old. I think parents, I have a niece that's 12 years old and she is engaged in money and online shopping. She has her own little account. She has a debit card that her mother gives her allowance on. And I think that started way earlier. My daughter didn't get a debit card until she was about ready to go to college, when she was at the end of her high school years. So I think the financial literacy does need to start early. And because it needs to start early, obviously you can't sit in front of a 5-year-old and talk about stocks and bonds and the market. But you're going to start by exposing them to things like board games and role playing and different things that, maybe games that have to do with coins. In our generation, people played Monopoly a lot and you would buy things and save. And so you need to start, maybe getting every child a piggy bank, getting them to, decorate their own piggy bank and put the money in it. And then they can collect money. Because at the beginning, it's the financial conversation is hard because, children don't make their own money and they're not working. And it's actually money that you give to them. So you have to find ways first to broach the subject. And then as the stages change from pocket money to money because they do chores, to internships where they can make some money, or outside jobs when they're a bit older, to then going away to college. I think at every stage of that, the tools and the discussion will be different.
You're saying start when they're very young, maybe with a piggy bank, playing board games which have to do with money, role playing games. But given what you're saying, and I agree, when you and I brought up our children, we didn't have so much social media. We didn't have TikTok, and we didn't have Instagram, and we didn't have so much of this consumer culture. Given that exists today, how do we encourage our children to have, or the children who are being brought up now, to have sensible spending habits and to make informed financial decisions? Because there seems to be so much consumerism.
I think, look, the world has a lot of the consumerism is obviously very strong, but also kids have a lot of peer pressure at school about, wearing the right shoe, or, especially kids that are living in major metropolis cities. Some kids are not exposed to so much affluency early on. I'm talking about the kids that live in London, New York, Paris, Frankfurt, major cities where they're going to schools where all of this is happening all the time. And I think the best thing to start before, in my opinion, the way to go about it before you actually start structuring specific steps is they learn from the conversation at home, and they learn from what they see. So the parents have to be very, very honest with themselves if they really want to tackle this issue. I think it's very important for your children to understand that what they see in their family is different than what they might see in another family, that how much their father and mother makes might be very different than a family that, has a huge industrial company, that someone who's an investment banker is very different than someone who's a shop clerk. And I don't think people should shy away from this conversation, that, just like we're all different about where we come from, what we believe, what our color might be, our orientation might be, I think it's really important to explain to children first that different people have different means, and we need to be sensitive to that. And then they learn from what they see you doing. So I feel like if a parent is always buying whatever their child wants without explaining anything, they see their parents shopping all the time without saying anything about the value of money. And again, whether we actually need this or just want it. And if we do want it, why do we want it? And it's okay to want things, but then don't say you need it, because you can very well live without it. So I think that dialogue needs to start at home. They learn from what they see. If they see you spending in a very irrational way, and then you say, well, no, you can't buy this, they're obviously not going to be listening or learning anything from that message.
No, that's absolutely right. And what you've said about what they see, we set an example for our children. So children see this at home. But also, what I've realized, we've been doing this financial well-being season. And I always suspected this, but I didn't realize before I did this season how complicated people's relationship with money can be, right? Now, how do we make sure that that doesn't get transferred onto the children? Because obviously, children are like sponges. They absorb what they're seeing around them, especially in their families. And if the parents have a complicated relationship with money, how do we stop the children, or how do the parents make sure that their children's relationship with money is okay?
Look, lots of people have a very complicated relationship with money. Me being in the finance industry and having worked at a certain point with wealth managers and with family offices that are managing money for very large and wealthy families, you could see how difficult even the interpersonal relationships and motives behind family relationships are because of money. What you want to avoid is you want to teach your child that money is only a tool, just like education is a tool, just like any skill is a tool. You teach them that money in itself is not important, but that money in itself is a tool we use to achieve certain goals. And you start to teach them about how to set those goals. So if you teach them, for example, about saving to buy something they really want, and to work towards that, to earn it. So I think that's one way to uncomplicate the relationship by teaching them first it's a tool, by teaching them that they can be in control. Because if they want something really, then they can, for example, save from the money their parents give them, save from like birthday money, Christmas money, things that grandparents give. If they're older, like they're 13, 15, whatever, then they can be doing chores or working outside the house, like do a newspaper run, work in a charity shop, and do the little things that younger kids can get jobs in. And they would be making some money out of that. And then they can be in control of that money, but they earned it, and therefore they have the right to control it. And they can set a goal, like I want to buy, let's say, earphones. I want to buy a new phone. I want to buy whatever, where you make them realize the value of money, but that it's a tool. It's not the aim. I think the relationship becomes complicated. And that's why I started by saying it's important to segregate between what we need and what we want. The other part of that is what is financial independence and what is wealth. Okay. A lot of kids, especially kids who have financial parents, they grow up and they say things like, I want to be rich, so I'll be a hedge fund manager. You want to really have a very serious conversation around this and explain to them that being rich is not an aim, it's not a goal to have. And then you uncomplicate the relationship this way. And I think there's a lot of apps now, which 10 years ago there weren't, about financial literacy, like budgeting, like saving, like charity. So I think one of the main things I did with my child, and I grew up in a house, I think I was very conscious about this because I grew up in a house where nobody ever talked about money. And nobody
Same
ever.
here. I think in our generation, when we were growing up, people didn't discuss it.
People didn't discuss it. Obviously, we were lucky enough, you and I, we grew up in fairly affluent homes. So we didn't have kind of traumas around parents that needed to work 3 jobs and not spend time with us because they can't afford this, or we didn't have to leave school because our parents couldn't pay our tuition, or we didn't go to college on school loans. But a lot of people who have that situation, they get exposed to money much earlier than people like us. And so I felt that my daughter needed to get exposed because I felt that I was never exposed. But nobody ever told me you need to save, or this is too much, or this is too little. So with my daughter, what I did is any money she had, whether it was like pocket money, like £5, every couple of weeks, or whether, some family member gave her money for her birthday or for Christmas or whatever, I always told her that she has to split that money into 3 pools. The first pool was to spend it for, to do something that she liked or wanted, candy, whatever, when she was younger. The second pool had to be saved, where she can just keep it in her piggy bank. And then if she wanted to actually buy something bigger, then she could be working towards that goal. And the third pool was to give away to charity. And she could pick the cause that she could give that money to. And this started from as little as she was 7 years old. And I asked her to do that, and she was doing it very gladly. And now, she's 25 years old, living in New York, and she today obviously has different skill set on how to manage her money. But this part about giving away part of it, and this part about understanding that there's a difference between independence and wealth, is natural to her now. It's really important for a child to understand financial independence is required for everybody. Wealth is a different story because not everyone's going to become rich. And you don't want from a young age, exactly what you're saying, children to become obsessed with the idea that the reason they're doing all these things is just to become rich.
So on that note, I want to ask you something. Is there an age which is too young to talk about money? Would you feel like, don't start at this age, start later? Is there something like too young or not?
I think, look, if you're 5 years old and you play a coins game, or you play a shopkeeper, that's buying vegetables and fruits and things like that, I think those things that we were talking about before, saving in a piggy bank, I don't think you're too young to ever be taught about the fact that money is a tool and it shouldn't be your primary goal. I think you say it in little things when you're younger. As they get older, you give them bigger examples or you show them bigger examples. I think learning that you have a social responsibility towards the community that you live in. So the money that you make or are given, you should part with some of that to children that are less advantage to you or to people around you. I think you're not too young to do that. I think if a child bakes some cookies or makes lemonade and sells it when they're 5, 6 years old at their beach home or in their schoolyard or whatever, that's not going to harm them in any way. That's going to teach them to be less self-centered. It's going to teach them also that in their quest for money, it's not just for them, that when they have more, they should part with more. So you're introducing philanthropy in a very kind of
Gentle, fun way.
gentle, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Everyone's going to become Bill Gates and have a foundation, right? And you don't want to set the goal that, to be successful, you need to become a hedge fund manager or an institutional manager, then you have to have a foundation, because lots of people's paths won't go that way. And then people become frustrated and feel like they can't help.
Right. And tell me, when they get a little bit older, do you think financial decisions should be part, or financial learning should be part of a school curriculum?
I think so. And I think like around the age of, like, let's say for the English system, kind of like before the 11 plus and after you've gone into secondary school, I think there should definitely be part of the curriculum, just like they have things like design and technology, just like they have things that have to do with non-core courses that are not really part of like sciences and math and humanities. A lot of kids are exposed to entrepreneurship now, because this generation, not like our generation, kids are setting up companies from ages of like 15 and 18 and things like that. And I think along before that, if you give them financial literacy, it will help a lot with entrepreneurship, which is a big theme with younger kids now. It will help a lot with the stage of them leaving home and getting prepared with living on their own. And so I think, yes, financial literacy should be part of the curriculum. It should prepare people for things like wanting to study economics or finance also. Because many people go to university and they say, I want to be a business major. They've never had a single financial course. They've never been exposed to any accounting principles of any kind before they go to university. So I don't think they should have it at age 5 or 6, but I definitely think around that 11 plus mark and after it, it would make a lot of sense for kids to have a financial literacy model, at least a choice. And then if parents say, well, my child can't do that because I want them to study languages more, I want them to do something else, that's fine. It would be nice to say that there should be some mandatory learning about finance. I think that's very, very important. I advise every parent to encourage their child, even if they're studying engineering, even if they're not in the US system, which is a liberal arts education, which you can have a lot of electives. So if you're studying in Germany or if you're studying in France, I think it's really important for every parent to tell their child, take one basic accounting course and one basic finance course, because they just can't get on with the world around them if they don't understand that.
That's exactly what we've been telling the girls, because neither of them have gone the finance way. But we're saying it's important that do one course in finance, because unfortunately it's not taught in schools. But for people who have younger children, Soha, are there any resources or tools that you can recommend to teach children budgeting and financial management?
Anshu, there are so many apps online now, and they are categorized by age. So there are apps that are for teenagers and young adults. And then there's the apps that, you and I would use, which are like financial budgeting tools. They basically get you to put all your information about like how much you spend every month, how much your income is, and then they model everything. And then some of these apps also are connected for the older people. They can be connected to your bank account and they can be connected to your debit card. So there is a lot of tools. And then there's the traditional tool. In our household, when my daughter went to university, there were the apps which she wanted to use, but actually my husband told me that the best way to tackle this with her is to do it the old-fashioned way, which is to get her to understand accounting, to get her to understand like a ledger account, and to start actually keeping her receipts and doing like the way we used to do expenses at work before, where you would have like a spreadsheet, you would put all your expenses in it, and so that's how we started in our family with her. But I think with a lot of kids
And
that
did
are
she keep it up?
she has kept it up. And whenever she wants to discuss budgets with us now, like whenever she wants to say things like, well, I'm thinking, should I get a mortgage? Would you guys help me with a down payment and then I can pay you guys back with for this and that? She always prepares a spreadsheet. And this spreadsheet is based on her current expenses and like, where she always has like a worst case scenario and a best case scenario. As they get older, we've also taught her, which I think is really important. When you're young, you teach your kids about basic savings. As they get older, you want to teach them that there's also hidden costs in their lives. So things like subscriptions to Apple and Spotify, subscriptions
Yes.
to diet programs, all these things have hidden costs because if you don't pay by a certain time, they increase in price. If you don't cancel them by a certain time, they increase in price. So teaching your kids that this new world they're living in has a lot of hidden costs. It's not just a matter of signing up for £5 for something or the other. I think that's important.
That's a very good point, Soha. I think a lot of kids miss that because they just think it's a click of a button and they get everything, right?
Yes, and things like, oh, I found this place to live in, mom, and it's really great. And they don't know anything about like how much extra costs they have to pay for utilities, for electricity. So all of that, they need to, as they get older, you need to be helping them. And I think the best way to start once they're a bit older is once they have a proper salary and they have one proper salary, is to go through one cycle of this budgeting with them and then let them after that get on with it. And I think they do. Some will probably prefer the tech app route because some do everything because you can even keep it on your phone, right?
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
bank on your phone and you can have your budget on your phone and you can have your monthly expenses on your phone. You can have that all on your phone now. I think a lot of people prefer that, especially the younger audience, than to actually have a notebook where you sit or on your computer where you do a spreadsheet and you take notes and you do all of that. And really, there is so much on the market in terms of apps and they're really they classify them by age so that some stuff you can't show that to a younger kid because they just won't understand at all. So I mean that would be my point of view on.
So, Soha, tell us about the apps that you would recommend that parents can use to educate their children about financial literacy.
Yes, there's a few that are quite good that have been used other than the apps that come with some of the banks that have large student accounts type of literacy. So like HSBC or Barclays have these large student accounts that they offer now for students both at school. So anyone from kind of 15, 16 can have those. The debit card, you get a student account, but along with that student account, you can on the Barclays app do all kinds of things like set all your direct debit, set all your budget, set all the things, all your expenses that come out, and then it even has a section for you to see if you can borrow. And then obviously older 18-year-olds have different accounts. There is Zogo, which gives bite-size literacy lessons. So I assume this would be good because it gives you financial literacy at different stages depending on how complex you want it to be. There's something called Rooster Money, which is something that works for young kids that are on allowance.
Okay.
There is Stock Market Games, which is about parents who want their kids to start like a financial portfolio or start investing from a young age from their own allowance and from money they save. And then there is Copper, Kids and Teen Banking. Copper is a banking app and it's designed to teach kids and teens about money management and it fosters financial literacy. You can pay bills through it.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Soha. As the world of finance gets more digitized. How can parents and educators assist the children on navigating online banking, digital payments, protecting themselves against scams, against identity theft?
I have been, I have had money taken out of my account, and I have had my cards, copied in places that I travel, and I'm a very well-traveled person, and I have a business card that I only use for business. And like I've separated how I use my cards to protect against this. So this is one way you can do it. You can tell them that, when you travel and when you go to places that you don't know and all of that, you should have maybe, one card that you use for all of these things. There's a lot of new tools now for the younger kids, like the young adults. Anshu, there's things like the Revolut card and the Monzo
Yes,
card, and all of
yes.
those are a bit safer, because then,
I learned about this from my daughter, the Revolut card. Yes.
exactly. And this Revolut card is kind of amazing. I don't have one, but I learned also from my daughter. But it's kind of amazing, because you can Venmo to people through all of this. So
Mhm.
the way the transactions are being done, it's a lot harder for scamming to happen. And you don't have an actual account; it's a virtual account. So, I assume those have higher levels security than probably, some of the other accounts. But look, I mean, British Airways had all its data of its customers and the credit cards that we use with BA stolen. So I suppose there's only so much you can do, but teach them things like don't show your PIN to anyone, don't give your debit card to anybody. Use these tools like Revolut and Monzo and these other ones. Try to do your transfers through those systems. You can exchange money through those systems. So scams about exchange rates and stuff like that. You can convert from like dollar to sterling, sterling to euro on these Revolut cards without commission and without any kind of, transaction cost. So, you know, it's a continuous learning process. And because it's a digital process now, and what you and I knew 2 years ago is completely irrelevant today. So it's
Yes,
going to be, that's why I'm saying financial literacy should be taught earlier now, because of this,
because of all this. Yeah.
because of social media, number one. Second, because of this digital thing that everything is on your phone, which requires a whole different set of understanding how to maintain your budget, how to keep your credit card safe, and how to monitor your account.
Well, the other day I got scammed because in front of a bank machine, someone had put in a device which looks just like a bank machine, and it ate up my card and it copied my PIN. So, just a warning to all parents out there, you need to tell your children to be very careful. Go into the bank and get your money out in the teller machine inside a bank.
Well, this has happened to me before, so I understand what you're saying, because it's happened to me before. Before I was in Germany, and my card was eaten the way you say, and it was the weekend. I couldn't get my card back. Now, luckily, I had other cards, but then I'm, an adult and a professional. There's lots of people that just have one card. So if this happens, they might not have access to their account at all. So
Exactly.
along with this world comes the concept that you have to be very vigilant. The internet and all of this automated access and all this digital access has a lot of positives in it, like we said, but it also has a lot of negatives. People can hack into your data, and we know about hackers because, if they can hack into government institutions that are counting votes in an election, then they can definitely hack into your account. And what I'm saying is, it's a continuous process of learning and being vigilant, because it changes all the time.
Absolutely. Tell me, Soha, do you feel like there are any specific financial errors or misconceptions that parents commit when preparing their children for financial success? And if so, how can we do something about it? Or what can we do about it?
Different people have different parenting styles. Every parent does the best they can. And you cannot claim to say, well, this method works, because also the child has their own DNA and the circumstances that the child is growing up in, and the influences that are affecting this family or this child, or the peer pressure they're experiencing at school. All of that is going to affect things. My take on parenting is that everything comes with appropriateness of age. And that's why I was saying making them understand the difference between financial independence and wealth, because one of the dangers is that kids become obsessed with money. That's one of the main
Mhm.
dangers.
Absolutely.
The other
And
danger
that's why I asked you that question about what is the right age. Exactly because of that.
because of that. And then the other problem that you encounter while you're parenting about money is that kids might start to value people based on whether they have money or not.
Mm-hmm.
So if your child is not exposed, is only exposed to quite a wealthy community or an affluent community, everyone's talking about money, and then everyone's got like very lovely cars, very lovely homes, all of this. They might actually begin to think that that's the norm. And then
Mm-hmm.
people that don't fit into that mold are less better than them or they're not equal to them. And so you don't want money to become almost like a classist thing or a thing that makes people feel better than others or worthier than others. So that's the danger if they're too young and you haven't put the right things in place, that they might also use language around money to intimidate other people or hurt other people that don't have money. And so that's why I'm saying identifying it as a tool, teaching them from what you practice, and then build the information around money based on their age. So you start very young with the games, with the things, with the saving in a piggy bank. Then you move up from that into like chores and savings because you've got all this extra money from your family. You can't just spend it. Your grandmother all of a sudden give you £100. You can't just go out and do whatever you want with it. Then you plan this whole budgeting concept of like splitting the money between different pots and them being being responsible for that. And then you move into like an internship or a job. So it's in stages. I see it that way. If it's in stages, you should be able to avoid like serious pitfalls with them becoming too obsessed or God forbid, some kids get involved with illegal things with social media again, taking nude pictures of people and selling them, or taking nude pictures of themselves and selling them, or being in an environment where they're exposed to maybe someone who's doing drugs, then they sell drugs to other kids. Like these things can be as a result of, peer pressure and all kinds of problems, but also they can be as a result of conversations about money that weren't handled the right way, making kids feel like the most important thing in the world is to have money.
So, Soha, talk to me about what you think about the gender gap in financial literacy. What can we do about that? How can we prevent that going forward?
Look, there's definitely a gender gap in financial literacy. There's a gender gap in women in finance versus men. There's a gender gap between women who graduate from girls' school and boys who graduate from boys' school. And this is a struggle we have to tackle. And the only way you tackle it is first girls' education and making sure that girls stay in school and making sure that all girls are getting educated and making sure girls have access to scholarships and to be able to go to better places to be educated. So, this is very important. And I think, women like us have a role to be mentors to girls.
Mm-hmm.
I think, if you're going to give some of your time away to help with a local charity or whatever, just help mentor them about day-to-day life problems that they're going to face, problems they're going to face at work, problems they're going to face to buy their first home if they want to. And I think we have to teach girls that you need to be financially independent. And I think this is something my parents, they might not have taught me anything about financial literacy as I was growing up, like I told you. The one thing my father told me is that financial independence is something that you need to have, because if anyone gives you money, it will never feel the same as making your own money. And I think this is a very basic lesson to teach kids at home first. Look,
Mm-hmm.
I can give you £5 to go, to buy some candy and to go have a meal and to have ice cream and to do that. But if you do a chore and make £5, or if you go work in the local store and make £5, it's going to feel very, very different. And when you earn, that's going to give you a certain power that helps you face a lot of the things you have to face in life. So I think this is very important, teaching girls that whether they come from an affluent family and their parents are going to leave them lots of money, whether they get married into a very rich family, all these things don't matter. They, as human beings, need to be financially independent on their own, aside from all this environment around them. This idea that someone needs to take care of them or give them, this is it's like a bonus. It's an added, but you need to be your own person like everybody else. I think this is very important. Everything starts with education. So, girls have not had the same opportunities in education as men, but they're getting more. And if more women get involved in that, then they'll help more girls. So I think this is another way, we can help. And then obviously the third way is to have role models and mentors that are women. Because like in our generation, a lot of our mentors and role models were men. A lot of the heroes in the books and the stories were men.
Yeah.
They were not women.
That is very true. And do you think there are any particular skills or knowledge areas that are overlooked
For women?
regarding financial success?
Well, I think for women in general, it starts with school. They always assume boys will do better in math and science than girls, right? Well, math is very important for financial success and financial literacy. And so a lot of schools until today will always say, well, yes, it's the same for boys and girls, but girls, and, because I have been involved in helping schools, I can see that this is a common theme, and it's not a common theme in India or the Middle East. This is a common theme in Western countries, right? So let alone you cannot
everywhere. Yeah.
But you can imagine how much worse it is in a little town or a little village in Egypt or in India. It must be hundreds of times worse. If in like central London and New York, people say, well, boys do better with math. You need to break these misconceptions, God didn't create men smarter or women dumber or women smarter or, people have individual IQs that have nothing to do with gender. But exposure is very important. And then what I'm saying is, boys from a young age, people talk to them about things. If they've got a father who's a banker, or if, like when you come from a family where it's an industrial family, there's a family business. Even if there's 3 kids, they naturally look to the boy first as being able to take over the family business, right? It's the same way, even with royalty, they look to the heir of the throne as being a male figure first, then a female figure. Almost the female figures are always the replacement. So that's the same way with finance. It's no different. I just think it's all about dialogue, about education, and also about women creating networks to help other women. I think there's more now, but generally, men have always had boys' clubs and networks to help other men much more than we did, right?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. The amount of women who freak out when they see a P&L, I mean, they completely get cold sweats. Why is that?
Look, I'm going to tell you, I mean, from being from having worked all of my life, except for very short intervals when I didn't work, even with interviews and everything, men and women are very different about these things. Men are taught to have enough confidence to bluff through a lot of things. Women believe they must know everything in order to speak about it, otherwise they're scared, especially in a kind of professional context. So financial literacy, a lot of women, adult women, not young kids, say, I don't know anything about that. My husband manages the finances. And that's why I'm saying, teaching a girl from a young age, you need to be financially independent. Financial literacy is a way to protect themselves, right? It's a way to take care of them. It's a way for them to have choices, right? And so it's really important, because later the conversation will develop into, do you want to take a loan? Do you want to have a mortgage? Do you want to be able to leave your job? And to be able to leave your job, you need to have maybe 6 months or a year's worth of money to keep you going, so you can leave your job and have money that can take care of you at this time. So I go back to the beginning. What I told you is the difference between want and need, the difference between wealth and independence, and then the stages of your life, how to broach the different material for the stages of your life. So from, as a toddler versus as a preteen versus as a teen, then versus a young adult.
So something struck me. You said the difference between want and need. How do we teach the next generation about sustainable finance and socially responsible investing. Because socially responsible investing today is a need. It's important. It's absolutely important.
It has to start with telling kids all of these byproducts. We're such a spoiled society. What have we done with the environment? All these extra things that we don't need, like I remember in my grandmother's home, water was always in glass bottles. And then we got into this whole plastic disposable carrying around everything, which is horrible because, we can't do, plastic is destroying our planet. It's also the worst thing for our health, Anshu. All of these portable, disposable meals, containers, plastic bottles, which are carrying water. This water is completely bad because it's plastic sitting in the heat in all of these transportation modes. So I think tying in sustainability through health and through what we actually need. What do our bodies actually need? We're eating all of the stuff that we don't need at all, that's contributing only disease to our body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where you bring the link in for the kids, invest in things or invest in companies that do good.
Sometimes what happens is, and I see this argument all the time, because the financially responsible investment choices are not giving you the returns today, but then you're investing in the future.
I think you have to teach your kids, that life is a holistic approach. That's what I think. I think that you have to teach your kids that everything is interconnected. And because something is not producing anything bad for you right now, or because something is giving you money right now, but it's actually from a very bad source, like selling arms or dealing drugs probably makes more money than a lot of other things. But you have to teach your kids that just because, this immediate satisfaction concept, that again, it ties to wanting to be rich. The reason people get into all of these things about returns is because everyone thinks that the aim is to be rich. The aim is not to be financially independent. The aim is not to give back to society. If we change that dialogue, that the wealthier you are and the more affluent you are, that you have a social responsibility. And that social responsibility is a holistic approach in what you invest, in what you eat, in what you spend your money on, and in what you give charity to. Then it makes sense because it's almost like a connected circle.
Very well said, Soha. Soha, I know you do a lot of work with children, with schools. So can you give us a success story about it or a case study of a child that you've come across where, thanks to early financial education and the right kind of financial education, they demonstrated significant financial success later in life?
So there is a child, we were supporting their tuition at school. And that child was obviously a very, very bright child from very, very modest means. So when she turned about 13, 14, she started going to school during the day and having almost a full-time job in the evenings. How she managed to to study and work and do all of that before she even got to college. Once you get to college, we were mentoring that child a lot about what she wants to do, how she wants to achieve it, all of that. She wanted to go and study in the United States. So getting her through school here in the UK, she did extremely well. And she managed to get a full scholarship in the US, a need-blind scholarship. She is living in Spain now, and she is getting ready to also pursue higher degree. She's doing extremely well. She works for a Spanish marketing company. And I think, look, it's a combination of this child understanding the importance of money, obviously, because she came from limited means. And what I'm trying to point out here on show is that it's a lot harder to achieve that with kids who come from affluent backgrounds. This child came from a background where she could see how hard her parents were working and they couldn't get her a good school because the parents' combined income was less than £30,000 a year. So she could not go into a private school in the UK with that income, right? And she had siblings.
Right.
In a way, her circumstances could have contributed that she becomes this like really angry child who's out and partying, or she could become this very focused child. Now, her being good at school helped her get, this bursary from us, but also us mentoring her and her being in the right environment at a school that pushed you for excellence and that pushed you for your academic ability, showed you that you're going to be respected if you're, if you have academic, you're going to have choices. And I think this is the underlying thing. You have to explain to kids that financial independence is a tool that affords you choices.
Yes.
And you don't have those choices in life if you don't use this tool the right way.
Now, Soha, at the end of the conversation, we summarize it with a rapid fire round. Very quick questions. What is the best age to start preparing kids for financial success?
I think about 8 to 10 years old.
Thank you. Could you share one important strategy for teaching budgeting and financial management to a child?
It depends on their age, but I think definitely the idea of you giving them a certain amount of money through either work or chores and them splitting this money into pots, like I said, is a very preliminary tool that then you can sophisticate and build on as you're older.
What is a common pitfall to avoid when introducing children to financial literacy?
That it's not wealth that's important, it's how you use your wealth.
Thank you, Soha. Soha, that was an incredible conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for being here with us today and for listening to this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. And I hope we brought you a little closer to leading a healthier, happier, more hopeful life. If you enjoyed this, please do subscribe to this channel, subscribe to the podcasts on Wellness Curated, subscribe to YouTube, Wellness Curated by Anshu Bahanda. This will ensure that we can get you more and more speakers and continue to provide you this service for free. And I would love to hear from you. So please send me an email to anshu@wellnesscurated.life with any ideas, questions, topic suggestions. Thank you again for being here with us and see you next week.